Look at the calendar. Just pull it up right now. Today is April 10th, 2026.
Right.
Now, I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow, you pour your coffee, you check your phone, and bam, you see an email from your legal department.
Oh, the dreaded legal email.
Exactly. You've just been hit with a fine of 30 million euros. Or, depending on your scale, a fine equal to 6% of your company's global annual revenue. Whichever number happens to completely destroy your quarterly earnings more.
Yeah, that's a rough morning.
Right. And the reason? Because an autonomous internal tool your developers built, maybe to sort through supply chain data, or an HR filtering algorithm, wasn't properly documented under the new regulatory framework.
It is a terrifying scenario. And the thing is, it is no longer a hypothetical exercise for the risk department. We are looking at a massive, very real ticking clock right now.
Yeah.
August 2nd, 2026. That is the exact date the European Union's AI Act takes full effect. I mean, every single provision, every enforcement mechanism, it all goes live.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are pulling from a pretty deep stack of intelligence today to help you navigate this exact timeline. We're looking at McKinsey's latest AI gap analysis, some really interesting enterprise architecture studies from Forester and Deloitte, and comprehensive compliance playbooks published by the Dutch AI consultancy AetherLink.
Yeah, lots of ground to cover.
For sure.
Oh.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward, honestly. We need to translate the EU AI Act from a looming legal threat into a concrete engineering and governance roadmap. Because for the European business leaders, CTOs, and developers listening right now, that 18-month preparation window that opened back in early 2025, it's basically slammed shut.
It's gone. We are in the final countdown. And, to understand the sheer scale of the panic happening in boardrooms right now, McKinsey recently ran the numbers on corporate readiness.
Oh, I bet those are grim.
Very. So 67% of European organizations acknowledge that enterprise-wide AI governance is an absolute critical necessity. They see the August deadline.
Right. They know it's there.
Exactly. But only 28% report having mature operational governance structures actually in place.
Wait, only 28%?
Yeah, just 28%.
That leaves a massive liability gap. I mean, is that just companies dragging their feet, or is the technical bar genuinely that high?
It's a mix of both, to be fair, but primarily the engineering reality of compliance is just so much harder than people assumed.
Right.
It transforms compliance from what used to be, a secondary legal checkbox into a core architectural requirement. The era of running isolated shadow IT pilot programs in the corner of your infrastructure, that's over. If you are deploying AI today, the governance has to be baked into the code base from day one.
Baked right in. So to avoid waking up to that 30 million euro fine, we really have to decode what the EU regulators are actually demanding here.
Yeah, we need to know the rules.
Right, because they aren't treating AI as a single monolith.
Yeah.
They've broken it down into a risk-tiered system. It's kind of like, regulating AI is like regulating vehicles, right?
Yeah.
A bicycle isn't governed by the same rules as a truck carrying hazardous waste.
That's a great way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, so the top tier is prohibited. Things like social credit scoring or workplace emotion recognition. You build it, you get fined. Full stop. Below that, you have minimal risk and limited risk, where you mostly just need transparency protocols, like flagging to a user that they're interacting with synthetic media or a chatbot.
But the battleground, right, the real battleground for enterprise CTOs sits in that high-risk category.
The hazardous waste truck.
Exactly. If you are deploying AI for recruitment, medical diagnostics, critical infrastructure, or automated financial decisioning, you are in this tier. And this is where regulators demand mandatory impact assessments, strict cybersecurity protocols, and just relentless transparency.
Which brings me to a specific requirement in the AetherLink playbook that I want to drill into. Because it sounds simple on paper, but looks like an absolute nightmare to engineer. Data lineage.
Oh, yeah, the receipts.
Right, the regulators want the receipts. If you cannot produce a documented, highly auditable history of exactly where your AI's training data came from, you fail the audit automatically.
And this is where developers are hitting a massive wall. Because data lineage isn't just, keeping a spreadsheet of where you bought a data set.
It's not just a Google Doc.
Haha, no, definitely not. The EU AI Act requires you to demonstrate technical proof of data provenance. We're talking about cryptographic hashing of your training sets, version control for your vector databases, and documented proof that your operational inputs meet strict quality standards.
Wait. So if my team pulls an open source model and fine-tunes it on our proprietary customer data, we need an auditable trail showing exactly which data points influence the fine-tuning weights.
Exactly. You need an automated inventory. But it goes beyond just the training phase. You also need continuous monitoring for something called data drift, which is honestly a massive trap for organizations that think compliance is a one-and-done launch day checklist.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of data drift. Because you're saying a model that is 100% legally compliant on launch day can just accidentally become illegal 6 months later.
Yes, simply because the real world changes. Yeah, data drift happens when the real-world operational data your AI starts processing diverges from the statistical distribution of the data it was trained on.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Sure. Let's say you build a high-risk credit decisioning algorithm, right? You train it on macroeconomic data from 2024. It passes all compliance checks. But then, in 2026, interest rates shift drastically, customer spending behavior changes, and suddenly the model's accuracy degrades.
Right, the world changed.
Right, and it starts making skewed or statistically unfair credit decisions. If you don't have automated drift detection thresholds built into your pipeline that flag that degradation in real time,
Yeah.
you are operating an ungoverned, non-compliant, high-risk system.
That makes tracking data lineage for a static classification model sound like a headache.
Yeah.
But the ground is completely shifting beneath us right now, which makes this 10 times harder.
Yeah.
The industry is moving away from large language models that just generate text toward large action models, agentic AI.
Yeah, and this is the most critical architectural transition happening in enterprise tech. It is the shift from semantic routing to autonomous execution networks.
Let's look at the AetherBot product line as an objective reference for this shift,
Yeah.
right? We are no longer talking about an internal tool that drafts a supplier email and then waits for a human to click send. Agentic AI executes API calls independently.
Completely autonomously.
Right. We're talking about models that negotiate with vendors, update developer code repositories, or execute complex financial transactions without human intervention.
And the operational model for an autonomous agent demands a fundamentally different governance approach. I mean, a text generation model hallucinating a weird sentence is an embarrassment, sure.
Yeah, you get a funny screenshot on social media.
Exactly. But a large action model hallucinating an API call, that could transfer millions of euros to the wrong vendor or commit deeply insecure code directly to your production environment.
I am going to push back here, though. Just on behalf of the developers and product leads listening, the entire value proposition of deploying autonomous agents is speed, right? Scale, removing bottlenecks.
Right.
But the compliance guides state that for agentic AI, you must engineer explicit decision authority boundaries. You need real-time audit trails documenting the agent's reasoning steps, and you need rapid intervention protocols, a mandatory human-in-the-loop kill switch.
That is the regulatory reality, yes.
But if we have to architect an asynchronous human approval queue and build a massive compliance audit trail for every single API call an autonomous agent makes, doesn't that totally neuter the technology?
I see where you're going.
I mean, you are essentially hiring a robot to do the work, but legally requiring a human to stand over its shoulder and watch every keystroke? Doesn't this heavy-handed governance just completely kill enterprise innovation?
It is the most common pushback from engineering teams. And frankly, it's a completely logical concern on the surface. But if we analyze the broader enterprise architecture, the business metrics tell the exact opposite story.
Really?
Yeah. Heavy governance, when engineered correctly, does not slow you down. It actually accelerates your deployment cycles and your return on investment.
Okay, I need you to explain the mechanics of that, because it sounds incredibly counterintuitive. How does adding legal red tape speed up engineering?
Let's look at the enterprise data from Forester and Deloitte. According to Forester's enterprise studies, organizations that systematically document their readiness assessments and build out these governance frameworks, they achieve their ROI 3.2 times faster than companies that just wing it.
Wait, 3.2 times faster.
Yep. And Deloitte found that enterprises utilizing structured AI value frameworks capture 4.1 times more value from their automation investments.
4 times more value, just from having a compliance framework in place.
Exactly, because you have to stop thinking of governance as regulatory red tape and start thinking of it as engineering scaffolding.
Scaffolding, okay.
Think about building a 100-story skyscraper. The scaffolding looks like it's in the way, right? It takes time to build, it restricts movement, and it costs money. But without that scaffolding, your workers can only build up to like the third floor before it becomes too dangerous to continue. The scaffolding is the only mechanism that allows them to safely build up to 100 stories.
That completely changes the framing. The audit trails, the token-based permission boundaries for the API calls, they give executive leadership the confidence to actually deploy the AI into production.
Exactly.
Because without that scaffolding, the CTO is terrified of the liability, so the AI just stays trapped in a sandbox forever.
Precisely. Organizations lacking these formal frameworks experience a 60% higher implementation failure rate. They try to move fast, they break things in a shadow IT environment, legal panics when they see the EU AI Act deadline approaching, and the project just gets scrapped. Proper baked-in governance ensures the automation actually survives contact with the real world.
Okay, I buy the scaffolding argument,
Yeah.
for sure. But how do you actually build that scaffolding enterprise-wide when you have, like, 300 developers pushing code in different departments?
That's the challenge.
Right, and the solution outlined in the source material is transitioning to what is called the AI factory model.
Yes, the AI factory model. It is the operational answer to the EU AI Act. It's the transition from artisanal, one-off AI projects to a standardized, highly governed CI/CD pipeline for machine learning. You treat AI development like an assembly line.
It is about creating a paved road for your developers. Instead of a developer spending 3 weeks waiting for legal and security to review a custom model they built from scratch, the AI factory provides containerized, pre-approved models.
Right.
You have standardized monitoring APIs and pre-vetted compliance documentation templates. You don't reinvent the compliance wheel every time someone wants to automate a workflow.
And the efficiency gains at the engineering level are just undeniable. Gartner's research shows that organizations utilizing an AI factory model report 2.8 times faster project delivery.
Wow.
And even better, they report a 52% reduction in compliance remediation costs compared to ad hoc approaches. I mean, doing it right at the architectural level is significantly cheaper than paying consultants to rip out and rewrite your code when the regulators finally audit you.
We should definitely analyze a real-world application of this because there is a fascinating case study in the AetherLink materials regarding the Ethermind consultancy division.
Oh, the financial services one.
Yeah, it involves a mid-sized European financial services firm managing 2.1 billion euros in assets under management. And they were sitting on a massive liability time bomb.
They were the quintessential example of the shadow IT problem. They had 14 different AI initiatives scattered across various departments. And because they were in financial services, several of these were squarely in the high-risk tier.
Credit algorithms, right?
Credit decisioning algorithms, fraud detection models, yeah. But they had zero centralized governance, fragmented documentation, and completely inconsistent monitoring.
So leadership looked at the looming August 2026 deadline and realized they had no idea if they were compliant. And worse, no way to quantify if any of these 14 projects were actually generating a return on investment.
None at all.
So they brought in outside consultants to implement this AI factory model while the business was still operating.
The intervention strategy was highly technical and structured over a really intense 6-month sprint. Phase 1 was pure discovery and mapping.
Right.
They ran a comprehensive readiness assessment of all 14 initiatives against the EU AI Act technical requirements. They mapped the data lineage for every single model, and they identified that 6 systems were high risk and required immediate architectural changes, while 8 were limited risk.
And just having that inventory is a massive operational victory. I mean, you can't govern what you can't see.
Exactly. Phase 2 was deploying the governance scaffolding. And this wasn't just writing policy documents, this was engineering. Establishing token-based API boundaries, integrating audit trail logging into the code bases, and building those asynchronous approval queues for the agentic systems.
And then phase 3 is where the continuous monitoring comes in. How did they actually solve the data drift problem technically?
So they deployed parallel shadow models and continuous monitoring dashboards. Essentially, they built telemetry into the AI systems that tracked the statistical distribution of incoming data in real time.
So if things change in the real world.
Right. If a credit algorithm started receiving application data that deviated from its training baselines by a certain percentage, the system would automatically trigger an escalation protocol. It would flag the anomaly to a human engineering team before the model could make an unlawful or biased decision.
Brilliant. And phase 4 was operational embedding, right? integrating these tools into the developer's existing CI/CD pipelines, so compliance became an invisible, automated step in the deployment process rather than a blocker.
Yeah, and the outcomes after just 6 months of this centralized AI factory approach are incredibly validating. Every single one of the 14 scattered initiatives achieved fully documented, audit-ready compliance.
The internal metric that really stands out to me, though, is that their regulatory confidence, like the leadership's actual belief that they wouldn't get fined, jumped from a terrifying 23% to 91%.
That's huge. And beyond the risk mitigation, because they finally had a standardized architecture to measure telemetry and performance, they proved 3.2 million euros in realized value across those pipelines, with another 1.8 million projected over the next 3 years.
Wow.
They didn't just avoid the EU fines, they transformed a massive legal liability into optimized, measurable engineering throughput.
Which brings us to the core takeaways from this deep dive. Because if there is one strategic paradigm shift I want you to take back to your engineering teams, it is that compliance is not a defense mechanism. It is a competitive moat.
How are you framing that strategically?
Well, look at the broader market. August 2026 is the hard deadline. While your competitors are scrambling this summer, desperately pausing their feature deployments, ripping out code, and fighting with their legal departments to avoid these massive fines, your company could be operating a tightly governed AI factory.
Right.
If you architected your scaffolding early, you will be deploying new autonomous tools at lightning speed while everyone else is just frozen by regulatory panic. It is entirely about speed to market. Compliance enables velocity.
That is a phenomenal perspective on market dynamics. And my primary takeaway focuses on the technical architecture of the future, specifically regarding large action models and agentic AI.
Let's hear it.
The sheer necessity of explicit decision boundaries, it just cannot be treated as an afterthought. You simply cannot deploy autonomous agents for business-critical workflows without real-time, ironclad audit trails and bounded execution environments. It is a foundational engineering requirement. If the agent is generating its own API calls, your governance telemetry must be just as automated, real-time, and responsive as the AI itself.
Yeah, the technology is simply too powerful, and the financial risks are way too high to rely on manual compliance checks anymore.
Which leads to a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as you plan your enterprise architecture for the rest of the year. Think about the top-tier developers, the elite data scientists, and the machine learning engineers you're trying to recruit right now.
Okay.
Do you genuinely think they want to work for an organization tangled in shadow IT, where every deployment is a stressful, weeks-long battle with the legal department?
Definitely not. No developer wants to spend their time writing compliance documentation.
Exactly. Or do you think they want to join a company whose AI factory is so seamlessly integrated and so well architected that they are completely free to pull pre-approved models, test wild ideas, and push to production without the constant fear of breaking international law?
That's a great point.
Your compliance architecture is not just a legal shield, it is essentially your most powerful talent acquisition strategy. Governance creates the frictionless environment required for elite engineering talent to actually build.
That flips the entire script on how we view regulation. Such an incredible place to wrap up today's analysis. For more AI insights, visit etherlink.ai.